Chapter 2. Where's Nina? Josefina closed her eyes and tried to picture Nina. The last time Josefina had seen her, Nina was wearing a pale blue skirt. Her arms and legs were flat because some of her stuffing had fallen out, and her black yarn hair was tangled. Josefina clearly remembered Nina's lively black eyes and her smiling pink mouth, and she was pretty sure she remembered a green sash tied around Nina's waist. I'll just keep my eyes sharp for any bit of green or pale or black or pale blue, Josefina thought. Nina has to be somewhere. The first place Josefina looked was in the room she shared with Clara and Francisca. Standing on tiptoe, Josefina ran her hand along the high shelves built into the walls. She looked in corners, under blankets, and behind the trunk that Clara and Francisca kept their clothes in. No Nina. Josefina opened the trunk to search inside. Clara's clothes were folded neatly and stacked in precise piles. Josefina looked between them and under them, but saw nothing. Francis's clothes were loosely folded and piled in the trunk in such a haphazard way that Josefina had to dig through them. She did find a missing stocking and a broken button and a hair ribbon that Francisca had loudly complained about losing, but she didn't find Nina. Josefina sat back on her heels and sighed. Where is Nina? She wondered. It was a question she asked herself hundreds of times as Christmas came nearer. No matter where she was or what else she was doing, Josefina was looking for Nina. She'd start searching early in the morning when the snow on the mountain still had its cool blue glow, and she wouldn't stop until late in the afternoon when the sunset made the snow look rosy. Josefina's eyes searched the sala when she knelt there first thing in the morning for prayer with her family. Every time she walked to the stream to fetch water for the day, she looked around hoping to see Nina hiding behind a rock or nestled at the foot of a tree. She explored every nook and cranny of the storerooms, the stables, and the chicken coops as she did her daily chores. She looked in the kitchen while she made biscocho cookies, maybe, and in the courtyard while she waited for bread to bake. She looked in the cradle when she rocked Anna's baby son to sleep. She looked in the weaving room behind the looms, in the stacks of finished blankets, and in the baskets of wool waiting to be carded and spun. Still no Nina. In desperation, Josefina even searched the goat's pen. You haven't eaten Nina, have you? She asked her old enemy, Florcita. The yellow-eyed goat looked at Josefina, blinked once, then turned away. Josefina tried hard not to be discouraged, even though she soon felt as if she'd searched every inch of the rancho. Then one day, Josefina and her sisters and Tia Dolores were invited to Senor Sanchez's house. Josefina was glad to go. She knew that Clara and Margarita Sanchez used to play dolls together. Maybe that's where Nina was. At least, it was a new place to look. Bendos Dias. Please come in, said Senora Sanchez, as she welcomed everyone to her house. Almost all of the women and children from the village were there. The woman had brought with them scraps of cloth and paper. They were using them to make flowers for ramillets to decorate the church on Christmas Eve. Tia Dolores had brought some yellow material that was left over from the new dress Josefina made for herself. Senora Sanchez was a stout, good-hearted woman who was well known for being generous and neighborly. She'd been a special friend of Mama's. They used to visit back and forth and share food and news and advice. Senora Sanchez always had time to sit and talk. And yet she seemed always to have something delicious cooking on the hearth. And her house was as neat as a pin. Mama used to say she didn't know how Senora Sanchez did it. But Senora Sanchez's house wasn't neat today. The women were gathered in the kitchen around the bright jumble of colored scraps. Josefina searched the kitchen with her eyes, hoping to see Nina. There was no doll to be seen, but Josefina couldn't help but smiling at the pile of finished ramillets. It looked as if a flower garden were blooming right there in the middle of Senora Sanchez's kitchen. Josefina turned to Tia Dolores. The ramillets remind me of flowers Mama planted in our courtyard, she said. Josefina, your Mama would be pleased with the way you've cared for the flowers she planted, said Tia Magdalia, who was Josefina's godmother. All the women murmured in agreement. Things grew well for your Mama, said Senora Lopez. Of course they did, said Senora Sanchez. And no wonder. She used to say to me, "You must treat flowers like people." The women nodded, and Senor Garcia's wife said, "Well, she certainly treated people kindly. Look how beautifully her daughters are growing." Senora Garcia turned to Tia Dolores. "And you've done well to teach the girls to read and write, and to encourage them to weave." Tia Dolores smiled. "They've worked very hard," she said. Josefina felt a warmth that came from more than the fire and the heart. Sweet mint tea. Sorina Sanchez served. She had known these women all her life, as far back as she could remember. They'd helped her when she was a flat-legged toddler, always underfoot and falling down, just like the toddlers there today. They'd known her when she tagged along watching Clara and Margarita play dolls. Back before Nina disappeared. When Mama died, all of these women had lost a dear friend. Josefina knew they'd never forget Mama, any more than she herself would. "Look!" said Francisca. She held a cloth flower behind one ear. It was made of a yellow material that Tia Dolores had brought. Francisca twitched her skirt and twirled around gracefully as she danced. Everyone laughed. Anna said, "The flower looks pretty in your hair, Francisca, but it'll look just as pretty in the church on Christmas Eve." "We'll put the ramelettes in an arch over the altar," said Senora Garcia to the girls, "and we'll put the cloth your Mama made on the altar. Didn't she have a fine hand for colchia embroidery?" said Tia Magdalia. "No village in New Mexico has a lovelier Christmas altar cloth." Senora Sanchez turned to her daughter Margarita, who was going to be Maria in Las Posadas this year. "Sing for us, Margarita," she said. "Sing the lullaby we always sing on Christmas Eve." Josefina held her breath while Margarita sang. "Sleep, my beautiful baby, sleep, my grain of gold." And everyone but Josefina joined in. "The night is very cold, the night is very cold." This time the lullaby didn't make Josefina cry. Instead she listened. Josefina thought, a song like this must go straight up to God like a prayer. With all her heart, Josefina wished she had the courage to be Maria in Las Posadas this Christmas, but with all her heart, she was sure that she did not. The December afternoon was short. The weak winter sun slid down behind the mountain early, and it was nearly dusk when Papa came to walk home with Tia Dolores and the sisters. He had been to church to get the trunk that had the Christmas altar cloth in it. Senora Sanchez beckoned to Josefina. "Come with me," she said. "I have something for you and your sisters to thank you for the chilies." Josefina followed Senora Sanchez outside. She was very surprised when Senora Sanchez handed her a little cage made out of bent wood. Inside the cage there was the plumpest, prettiest black and white hen Josefina had ever seen. "Oh, Senora Sanchez!" Josefina exclaimed. "Gracias!" Senora Sanchez beamed a great, generous smile. "She's a vain little hen, very proud of herself, I'm afraid," she said, "but she has reason to be proud. She lays very fine eggs. I thought you and your sisters could raise her chicks to increase your flock. I know you'll take good care of her." Josefina thanked Senor Sanchez again, and she held up the cage to look at the hen, who puffed herself and met Josefina's gaze with her beady black eyes. When Papa strapped the hen's cage onto the burrow next to the trunk from the church, he and Tia Dolores and the sisters began the long walk home. "Adios," the women called out after them. God keep you well. Josefina turned and waved. Adios, she called. It had been a long, full day, and Josefina was tired. As she walked along next to Clara, she said happily, "The ramelettes we made will look beautiful in our church, won't they?" "I suppose so," said Clara, rather sourly. Of course no one will know how to arrange them as nicely as Mama used to." She sighed. "Oh well, at least the altar cloth will look all right. It will be the way it used to be." When they were home at the rancho, Papa carried the trunk into the kitchen and sat down near the fire. "Wait till you see Mama's altar cloth." "Wait till you see Mama's altar cloth," Josefina said to Tia Dolores. "The birds that Mama embroidered on it look so real you expect them to sing." Tia Dolores smiled. She knelt next to the trunk. Papa and all the sisters crowded around, peering over her shoulders as she lifted the lid. Tia Dolores lifted the altar cloth out of the trunk, and they all looked at it. For a moment no one said anything. Then Papa pulled his breath in sharply, as if something had hurt him. Without a word he turned and left the room. Josefina was confused. What was this torn, bedraggled cloth in Tia Dolores' hands? The cloth looked like a rag. It was chewed by mice. It smelled of mildew. It was water-stained and dirty. It couldn't be Mama's beautiful embroidered altar cloth. But it was. "Oh no!" said Anna, sounding miserably. "Water from the flood must have rotted the leather of the trunk, so that mice and dampness got in. Just look at the damage that's been done. It's ruined!" Clara cried out. "It's ruined, just like Christmas." She rushed from the room. The door slammed behind her. The whole room and everyone in it was shaken. It wasn't like Clara to act like that. Her words echoed in Josefina's head. "It's ruined, just like Christmas." The knot inside Josefina tightened again. Just when Josefina had begun to hope that this Christmas might be happy, this had to happen. The beautiful altar cloth Mama had made so lovingly was destroyed. It hurt Josefina to look at it on Tia Dolores' lap. Tia Dolores unfolded the altar cloth slowly, never minding the dirt and mildew that soiled her skirt. The more she unfolded it, the more damage Josefina saw. Francisca lifted one corner using just the tips of her fingers. "Just look," she said. "It's in shreds." Anna sighed. "I'm glad Mama is not here to see this," she said. "It would break her heart." Tia Dolores didn't say anything. She examined the cloth carefully, running her hands over it. Then she said, "I think we can repair this." Ana, Francisca, and Josefina looked at each other. "But how?" asked Francisca. "First, we'll wash it," said Tia Dolores. "Then we'll iron it. We'll mend the embroidery wherever we can." "But what about the embroidery that the mice chewed away?" said Anna. "We'll replace it with new embroidery, said Tia Dolores. Francisca looked doubtful. We'll need Clara for that, she said. Mama taught us all crochet embroidery, but Clara's the best. She's the only one who's even close to doing crochet as well as Mama. Very well, said Tia Dolores. Josefina, please go to Clara and ask her to come back so that I may speak to her. Josefina nodded. Quickly she crossed the courtyard to the room she shared with Francisca and Clara. The room was partly open, and through it Josefina heard the sound of Clara crying. Josefina stood still, not sure what to do. She hesitated. She looked into the room. It was dark, but Josefina saw Clara open the clothes trunk and take out an old skirt that was neatly folded into a thick bundle. Clara unfolded the skirt. Josefina saw a bit of something pale blue and a flash of green, and there was Nina. Josefina gasped in surprise and bewilderment. Clara had Nina. The doll had been hidden in Clara's trunk all this time. Josefina took one step into the room, then stopped shortly when she saw Clara bury her face in Nina and sob. Clara cried as if her heart were broken, and she held on to Nina as if the doll were her only comfort in the world. Josefina turned away quietly so that Clara wouldn't hear her. When Josefina got back to the kitchen, Anna and Francisca were gone. Tia Dolores was alone, still holding the altar cloth. "Is Clara coming?" asked Tia Dolores. I don't know," stammered Josefina. Tia Dolores looked confused. She asked, "Didn't you speak to her?" "No," said Josefina. Suddenly she burst out, "Tia Dolores, Clara has Nina! I saw her! The door was open a little, and when I looked in, I saw Clara holding the doll." Josefina spoke as if she could hardly believe what she had seen. "Clara has known where Nina is all along. She's been keeping her for herself." Tia Dolores put the altar cloth down and took both Josefina's hands in her own. "I'm not sure I understand it," she said slowly, "but I think Clara misses your mama very, very much. Your mama made Nina. She made a new dress for her every Christmas. So Nina is a way for Clara to feel close to your mama. She's a comfort. Clara needs her." "But why did she pretend she didn't know where Nina was?" asked Josefina indignantly. "That wasn't true. Do you remember the other day when you told me how you're not ready to be Maria in Las Posadas?" Tia Dolores asked. Josefina nodded. "Well, Clara is not ready to give you Nina. That's why she's hiding her," said Tia Dolores. She looked at Josefina's long face and tried to cheer her. "At least we know that Nina isn't lost. She's safe." "That's good, isn't it?" "I guess so," Josefina admitted grudgingly. "But when will Clara give her to me? Will Nina ever be mine?" Tia Dolores sighed. "I don't know," she said. "No one knows. Probably not even Clara." It may take a long time. She put Josefina's hands aside and picked up the altar cloth again. Just as it'll take time to repair this altar cloth. But we'll do it. The sooner we begin, the better. Tia Dolores tried to tease a smile out of Josefina. What do I always say? She asked. Josefina had to smile just a little bit in spite of Clara, in spite of Nina, in spite of herself. You always say the saints cry over lost time. Precisely, said Tia Dolores briskly. We'll start tomorrow. Chapter 3. The Silver Thimble. And they did start repairing the altar cloth the very next day. Everyone except Clara. Josefina helped Tia Dolores wash the altar cloth in warm, soapy water and rinse it in clear, cool water. Gently, Tia Dolores wrung out the cloth. Then she and Josefina spread it out to dry in a sunny corner of the back courtyard. When the cloth was dry, Anna ironed it smooth, being careful not to scorch it with hot irons heated by the fire. Francisca helped Josefina mend some of the holes the mice had chewed, and Tia Dolores cut off the end where the holes were too big to mend. She attached a new piece of material in its place. At last the time came to begin the colicha embroidery. Tia Dolores and the four sisters gathered from in front of the fire as they did every evening. Tia Dolores spread out the altar cloth. What shall we embroider? She asked, looking at the sisters. Josefina looked at the altar cloth. Firelight brightened the colors of the designs that Mama had stitched. Josefina had an idea. Wait, she said. Very quickly she went to her room and found her memory box, the little box in which she kept things that reminded her of Mama. She brought the box back to the fireside. Mama made the altar cloth, she said. I think we should embroider things on it that she loved. Maybe the things in my box will give us ideas. Josefina opened her memory box, and Francisca took a swallow feather out of it. Mama loves swallows, Francisca said. I'll embroider swallows and other birds on the altar cloth. Anna took a bit of lavender-scented soap out of the box. She smelled it. I'll stitch sprigs of lavender, she said. Mama loved its scent. And I'll embroider leaves and flowers, said Josefina, as she took a dried primrose out of her memory box, because Mama loved them. And what will you embroider, Clara? Tia Dolores asked. Clara was only halfway in the firelight. She looked at the altar cloth with critical eyes. It doesn't matter, she said. We can't make the cloth look right again without Mama, anyway. We can, said Tia Dolores firmly. It'll take time, but we can repair it. And if we all work together, I think we'll even enjoy doing it. Clara drew back out of the light, but Josefina saw her face. She looked as sad as it did in the moment Josefina had seen Clara holding Nina and crying. Suddenly, Josefina felt sorry for Clara. Doing the crochet embroidery makes me miss Mama too, Clara, Josefina said. It makes her seem very far away, doesn't it? Clara didn't answer. Perhaps this will help, said Tia Dolores. She reached in her pocket and took out a silver thimble. Your mama gave this to me a long time ago when we were girls. She was trying to teach me how to crochet. I didn't like it because I kept pricking myself with the needle and it hurt. She gave me this thimble to protect my finger. Now all of you may use it to protect your fingers. Clara leaned forward on her stool. She looked at the thimble and then at Tia Dolores. If Mama gave something like that to me, I'd keep it forever, she said. I wouldn't dream of giving it away. Just like Nina, thought Josefina with a heavy heart. But it makes me happy to share the thimble, said Tia Dolores. When we use it, we'll think of your Mama with every stitch we make. Perhaps it will make her seem closer, not farther away. Oh, please, may I use it? Josefina asked. Tia Dolores handed the silver thimble to Josefina, and she put it on her finger. It looked shiny in the light of the fire. As she began stitching, Josefina used the thimble to help push the needle through the cloth. She knew Clara was watching her. When Josefina started to tie a knot at the end of the wool she was using, Clara moved next to her. Don't, said Clara. Have you forgotten? Mama said never to knot the wool. Use your second stitch to hold your first stitch in place. Here, let me show you. I'll stitch the stem of that flower for you. Clara spread the cloth over her knees and took the needle from Josefina, and she began to stitch. Francisca nudged Anna, and Anna raised her eyebrows at Josefina as if to say, "This is a surprise." Josefina took the thimble off her finger. "Use this," she said. Clara stopped for a moment. She looked at the thimble, then slowly took it from Josefina and slipped it on her finger. "Gracias," she said, but so quietly only Josefina could hear her. Josefina gave herself a job of untangling knots in the wool Tia Dolores was using. When she looked up a little while later, Josefina saw that Clara was finished stitching the stem and was embroidering a yellow blossom at the end of it. Josefina saw that Clara's stitches were smooth, sure, and secure. She also saw that Clara hadn't taken the silver thimble off her finger. On a still, cold evening, a few days later, Tia Dolores and the sisters were working on the altar cloth in front of the fire. "Francisca," said Josefina, "that chicken you're stitching looks just like the pretty little hen that Senora Sanchez gave us." Francisca groaned and pretended to be annoyed. "It's not supposed to be a chicken," she said. "It's supposed to be a sparrow." She held the altar cloth up so that Tia Dolores, Anna, and Clara could see it, too. "What do you think?" she said. "Can we pretend it's a very fat sparrow? One that clucks instead of singing?" teased Josefina. They all laughed, and Clara said, I can fix it for you." Just it just needs the feathers smoothed out a bit. Gracias, said Francisca. She let Clara take her needle with relief. Anna had been wearing the silver thimble, but now she handed it to Clara. You'll need this, she joked. Francisca's chicken might peck at you. Tia Dolores was right, thought Josefina as they all laughed. We are enjoying working together to repair Mama's altar cloth. I remember when Mama taught me to do colchia, said Clara. She told me, you'll like colchia. You have hands that need to be busy. Tia Dolores and the sisters smiled at Clara's memory. Josefina watched Clara stitch and admired, as she always did, the way the silver thimble shone in the firelight. The four sisters and Tia Dolores worked on the cloth almost every evening, and it was a time Josefina looked forward to. They took turns wearing the silver thimble. Francisca made a game out of it. She said whoever wore the thimble had to share a memory about Mama. Sometimes the memories would make Josefina sad, but sometimes they made her laugh because they reminded her of happy times. Just as the thimble protected Josefina and her sisters from pain of being pricked by the needle, it seemed to also protect them from the pain that memories of Mama used to bring. Repairing the altar cloth was slow work, but the days went by. Stitch by stitch, the cloth became beautiful again. And as the days went by, bit by bit, Josefina began to feel better about all the things this Christmas might bring, even though she was now quite sure Mina was not going to be one of them. Before they knew it, Christmas was only 9 days away, and it was time for Las Posadas to begin. On the night before Las Posadas, it was snowing lightly. When Josefina and her family walked to the village, Papa led the way holding a lantern light to the light of the road. When they came into the plaza, Josefina could see hot orange sparks from the bonfires rising up to meet the cold snowflakes. The biggest bonfire was in front of the church. Almost all of their friends and neighbors and all the workers from Papa's rancho had gathered around it. Everyone greeted the Montoyas when they joined the circle, and their breath puffed clouds into sharp air. As Josefina watched Margarita Sanchez climb onto the burro and settle her skirts, around her, she thought Margarita would be a very fine Maria, because it was the village tradition. Margarita's papa was being Jose. He led the burro to the first house, and everyone followed. He knocked on the door, and they all sang, "In heaven's name we ask for shelter." And then the people inside sang back, "This is not an inn, be on your way." At first, Josefina didn't even try to join in singing. She hung back, expecting to feel the same heavy, icy cold weight of sorrow she'd felt last year. But then she had missed the sound of Mama's voice so much that the music had been painful to hear. But tonight the music wasn't painful, it was gentle and familiar. Josefina listened very hard. It seemed to her that the music helped her to remember the sound of Mama's voice. And so she was glad to hear it. Josefina looked at the faces that surrounded her. She saw Senor Garcia's thin, kindly old face and Margarita Sanchez's young, round face. She saw Ana, Francisca, and Clara's with snowflakes clinging to their hair. She heard Papa's voice so low she could feel it inside of her. And Tia Dolores' voice, strong and clear. It was a comfort to be surrounded by these good people who had loved Mama too. Oh, Mama, Josefina thought, we all miss you so much. Somehow the thought made missing Mama easier to bear. Josefina shivered, but it was the beautiful music that made her shiver, not cold or sorrow. As she listened, Josefina thought about how people had been singing these same songs at Las Posadas for hundreds of years. They sang to honor God and to remember the first Christmas when Jesus was born. Josefina thought back to when Mama taught her the songs so that she could join the tradition. She remembered all the Christmases when she and Mama had taken part in Las Posadas together, and the memories were both sad and sweet. Tonight, the last house the procession went to was the Sanchez's family house. This time, after the people outside asked for shelter, the people inside opened the door wide. Josefina saw Senora Sanchez's good-natured face in the doorway and heard her sing louder than anyone else, "Come in, weary travelers, you are welcome." Josefina grinned. No one could doubt that Senora Sanchez truly meant the welcoming words from her heart. And Josefina meant it too, when she and the others began to sing their thanks in return. "God bless you for your kindness, and may heaven fill you with peace and joy." Then everyone crowded inside for prayers and for more singing before the party began. In the Sanchez family house, the air was spicy with delicious aromas of meat pies and tamales. And of course, Senora Sanchez's famous stew. Josefina saw Clara and Margarita warming themselves by the fire. They were looking at the ramelettes, and Clara was holding up a scrap of yellow cloth as if she were planning to make more flour. Her face looked happy and eager. Josefina thought that Clara must be feeling the same way she was, as if a heavy burden had started to slip away.